A stuck life rarely looks broken from the outside. Often, it looks responsible. You still answer messages, you still make the bed, and you still show up in the places where people expect you to be. But inside, it feels as if your feet have been pressed into wet cement. You aren't necessarily running away from your responsibilities, but you are no longer moving freely either. Forward momentum has become a heavy, conscious effort. When we hit this wall, it is tempting to find a spiritual reason for our lack of movement. We call it patience. We tell ourselves we are in a holy season of waiting for the right time, even when the quiet truth is that we are avoiding the discomfort of a specific instruction. There is a difference between holy stillness and paralysis. Stillness may ache, but it remains open toward God, doing what is already clear while waiting for more light. Paralysis circles the same thought until it becomes a room with no door, using the mystery of the future as an excuse to stop obeying in the present. Escaping this state requires the radical honesty of admitting why you haven't moved. Often, you aren't waiting for God to speak as much as you are waiting for the cost of obedience to become painless. Honesty clears the cluttered ground of the soul. Once that space is open, the small, specific faithfulness that you have been overlooking often becomes visible for the first time. When you feel trapped, your eyes naturally look for a large exit. You imagine movement as something big enough to prove the season is ending. A dramatic career shift, a move to a new city, or a problem resolving in a way that lets your whole body exhale. However, movement often begins in a place that feels insultingly small. The dishes need washing. The child needs gentleness. The message needs an honest answer. These are stones God gives you to carry when the mountain feels too heavy to move. Consider Elijah after his victory at Mount Carmel. He was exhausted, afraid, and ready to give up. God did not meet his spiritual despair with a lecture about his destiny. He gave him food and sleep. Sometimes what you call spiritual stuckness is partly the protest of a body that has been forced to carry endless anxiety. Jesus taught that one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. This is a mercy for the overwhelmed. It means you don't have to solve your whole life today. You only have to attend to the hour you are actually standing in. Ordinary faithfulness functions like physical therapy for the soul. Repeating these small, honest movements rebuilds your capacity to handle the deliverance you are waiting for. Movement is often hindered by a hidden weight, hands clenched around an unburied past. You may be asking for a path forward while quietly dragging a former season behind you like a suitcase with a broken wheel. The warning of Lot's wife describes this divided desire. Her body was on the road to safety, but her heart turned back toward what God was taking her out of. It is possible to physically leave a place while your allegiance remains tied to its ruins. Fear tricks the mind by polishing the past until captivity looks like comfort. It makes the predictability of slavery look better than the uncertainty of freedom, turning your memories into a veto against your current obedience. Letting go means you stop giving the past authority over your present steps. It allows you to mourn what was lost properly, so that you stop carrying it into every new room God opens for you. When a season is painful, any exit can look like rescue, but some exits are just avoidance with better scenery. If you leave too quickly without listening to the present, you will likely carry the same fears into your next destination. God spoke to displaced people in Babylon who desperately wanted to be somewhere else. He told them to build houses and plant gardens in their exile. This reveals a hard grace. An unwanted place is never outside the reach of obedience. Even in exile, there are gardens to plant and lives to be lived faithfully. Before you run for the gate, ask what God is exposing in this exact room. Learning to be faithful in the unwanted place ensures that when the door finally opens, you move through it with cleaner motives and a heart that is actually ready for what's next. We often delay movement because we think one wrong step will ruin everything. We wait for a feeling of courage or for the trembling to leave our bodies, assuming that obedience should feel painless. When Peter stepped onto the water, he did so at the command of a single word, "Come." He didn't have to perform confidence to get out of the boat. He simply had to trust the voice of Christ more than the logic of the storm. True movement does not require you to look strong. It only requires the trust to take a single, imperfect step while being honest about your fear. God is near enough to catch the one who obeys imperfectly. The first steps out of a long season of stuckness often feel weak and unsure. You might feel exposed or tired rather than immediately free. This is the natural sensation of muscles that are just beginning to breathe again. Consider the man at the pool of Bethesda, stuck for 38 years. His mat was his whole world. Jesus told him to take up his mat and walk. By carrying what once carried him, his past became a testimony of recovery. A healed life is rarely a hurried one. God restores us through a daily pace of grace, rather than a single spiritual spectacle. Strength returns by repeated use, praying without demanding profound feelings, and keeping the small boundaries you've set. Do not try to fix your entire life in one emotional rush. Return to the small faithfulness that is still yours today. Take one honest step of obedience and let fear lose its ownership over the ground beneath your feet.
What lesson spoke to your heart today? Tell us in the comments and subscribe for daily Bible wisdom.